Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Now, a lot of people are still asking the question after all this time, who rescued Grogu from Order 66? So instead of focusing on who rescued him, let's focus on what became of him after the rescue. Let's jump right into it. Alright, so it doesn't matter who actually rescued Grogu. There are several theories out there as to who did it, but perhaps that's not the question we should be asking, because virtually anyone could have rescued him. The two most unlikely candidates are going to be Obi-Wan and Yoda. Despite them going to the temple that same day, there is no evidence, there is no just cause as to why they would have been the ones to rescue Grogu. Number one, we know that they didn't go until after the Padawans were all slaughtered. The younglings were gone. So this brings us to some of the other Jedis that could have done it. And one of the to-go-to people is always Mace Windu, or the librarian. The librarian Jocasta Nu is shown to have survived. She is one of the more likely characters that could have rescued him. However, here's the problem with that. We know that later on, Darth Vader tracks her down and murders her. She didn't get to start her school of Jedi, so there's no reason why he would have taken Grogu from there. And if he took Grogu from there, well, then life's over for Grogu. And there is no need to ever find him in The Mandalorian, and it's signed, sealed, and delivered, he's gone. The theory that lingers still, and because the book of Boba Fett has begun to show us clips of Boba Fett's past, especially, we're getting people bringing back the, oh, we want to see Mace Windu come in and fight Boba Fett. It's only fitting. This is how Mace Windu dies. He fights Boba Fett and dies. This is what people are saying is going to happen. There was a time when I would have told you there was no way this was going to be the case. However, now we have seen a shift, if you will, in the fates, in the Force, where it's like now Samuel L. Jackson is going to be doing a Disney Plus show. Somewhere down the line, he's going to be doing a Disney Plus show, apparently. And if he's already going to sign on to do one, and he loves the character of Mace Windu, why wouldn't he jump at the chance to be Mace Windu again? And this would be closure for the many fans who loved Mace Windu, and also for the ones who didn't, who thought that, you know, Boba Fett's dad's death was unjust, or whatever, you know, however you feel about it. It presents an element that could now happen. However, there is another option. Barriss Offee was a Jedi who betrayed the Jedis and then framed Ahsoka Tano for it. Now, she bombed the Jedi Temple, framed Ahsoka Tano, and that presents a problem because she was thrown in prison. We know she's alive somewhere. The symbols have appeared since then. Spoilers, 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 spoilers. You won't find any here. But here's the thing about that. If Barriss is going to rescue Grogu, she'd have to escape from prison, be at the Jedi Temple, because there's no evidence she was being kept at the Jedi Temple. And then after that, she'd have to have an epiphany that maybe she was going to make up for her wrongdoing. Maybe that's what brings her to the Jedi Temple in the first place on that fateful day. The only thing about this is that when we see Ahsoka Tano talking about Grogu and his past, she communicates with Grogu in a way that the Mandalorian hasn't been able to. She says that he's seen a lot of things. She seems to understand and know of his past a little bit more than she puts on. If Ahsoka Tano saw Barriss Ulfi in a vision while talking to Grogu, don't you think she would have acted a little more strange? So the Barriss Ulfi thing could be a thing, but that's not what is important. At some time during all of this, he is kidnapped again by the remains of the Empire. It is here that we begin our speculation. Because no matter who rescues him, they manage to hide him for a little bit. But there's a good chance that the Empire already knew of his existence. And why? Because they had already begun the process of making sure they could use him to help their emperor. So the thing of it is, what happens to Grogu in the end after the series? What becomes of Grogu? Why isn't he in the sequel trilogy? Maybe it's because Grogu is indeed already dead. You see, Palpatine made Snoke. But Snoke is what is called a strand cast, which doesn't have to be a straight up clone. A strand cast is a species that has its own awareness. It has its own mindset. And it could very much be cloned from any other species, simply incorporating some other DNA to allow its existence. And Snoke seems to be a very different alien than any we'd seen in the past. If the series is going to interconnect and bring things full circle, they're going to have to explain where the strand cast bodies for Snoke officially came from. We see a variety of bodies that look like Snoke in the final movie, you know, in The Rise of Skywalker, but we don't see those same bodies anywhere else in comics. We see some of them, but the other bodies don't seem to always match. The bodies that are behind them or near them seem to be different species, different races. Why is this? Could there be more to that? The strand cast could, in fact, be incorporated from an alien species. And we know that they tried to create the Dark Troopers, which are essentially these robotic, cyborg-like stormtroopers who are very, very much force sensitive. They're like super troopers, you know? And could it have been Grogu's blood that ultimately led to their creation. If you think about it, in Mandalorian, when we see the Dark Troopers, Grogu had already been kidnapped twice. And the second time when the Mandalorian gave him the second time the Mandalorian kind of gave him to the Empire, and they got some blood from him. This could be the blood that created the Dark Troopers that we saw in The Mandalorian later on. I bring this up because it's a very, very high probability that Grogu may already be dead. However, that's grim, and nobody wants to think that. And I don't think that's where they're going to go. Honestly. It's a possibility as to why we didn't see him in the series of movies later on. But Grogu is probably the future of the Star Wars franchise. He'll be the one to bring the Jedi back years and years later after the Mandalorian is dead and gone. But here's the thing about that. The world in which he exists later on could be a very different world than what we've gotten to see in Star Wars so far. Because he could, in fact, be creating the enemies he would eventually see. So, that's my thoughts on what happens to Baby Yoda after he is rescued from Order 66. And what I kind of think will eventually happen to him later on down the line. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit that notification bell after you subscribe, because Miko says we need more subscribers. So subscribe, hit the notification bell, share this video with all of your friends so they get the same great content you do. And leave a comment in the comment box, because we like hearing from you, and YouTube likes it when we hear from you. So let's have a conversation, one fan to another. And everybody, be safe out there, and remember, above all else, at the end of the day, fandom is family.